Hello everyone and welcome to the webinar. In today's webinar, Tata Technologies has partnered with CIMdata to bring you a unique presentation entitled Realizing Your Product Development Performance, 5 Key Metrics for Change. My name is Chris Lifecycle and I'll be your host today. I'm joined by an expert panel, John MacKrell from CIMdata, Grealou from Tata Technologies, and also Chris Hind from Tata Technologies. In the next hour, our presenters will take us through the following topics. We'll begin with a series of short introductions on our panelists. Then we'll take a look at PLM as an operating model and its role in the product creation process. We'll also explore some key trends and issues facing the manufacturing industry, discuss how PLM can play a key role in manufacturing success, uncover some overlooked areas that typically limit PLM success, talk about how we can plan for success in any PLM improvement initiative, and finally we'll field some questions and answers from the audience. We'd remind you that you can enter those questions at any time during the webinar just by accessing your GoToWebinar panel and entering your question there. If we do not have time to answer your question today, every question will receive a personal email with an answer from one of our experts. Let's get started by getting to know our panelists. John MacKrell from CIMdata, Grealou, and Chris Hind from Tata Technologies. John, let's start with you.
Thank you. John MacKrell, I'm the Vice President of CIMdata. I have worked at CIMdata since 1990 and a bit before that actually as a contractor. My main background area has been in computer-aided design. That was my long history, and I've, of course, moved off into the PLM realm and do a lot of work with both industrial companies and solution providers in developing PLM strategies for both of those groups. Also do PLM selection with industrial companies and have some specialty areas around maturity assessments, ROIs, and the whole area of systems engineering. Thank you.
Leo, we could ask you.
Thanks, Chris. Hi, everyone. So I'm Leo. I currently head the PLM strategy and consulting for Tata Technologies. My experience in PLM started 18 years ago. I've been involved in the early days of PDM and working with various customers across the globe to implement their PLM strategies, especially around supplier chain strategies and collaboration. So I'm currently heading the PLM strategy for the company and looking forward to this webinar.
Thank you, Leo. And finally, Chris Hind.
Yes, thank you, Chris. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It's a pleasure to be with you here today. My name is Chris Hind, and I'm a principal consultant for Tata Technologies. I have 30-plus years experience in the aerospace and automotive industries, and I've been instrumental in many of the OEM and supply chain PLM improvement projects. I currently have the global responsibility for Tata Technologies' PLM Analytics suite of tools that I'll be talking to you about a bit later on today. Thank you.
Excellent. And we look forward to you guys sharing your expertise. To that point, we've structured today's presentation to deliver a number of key takeaways. Specifically, we'll be discussing the top 5 metrics leading manufacturers are using to get a maximum value from the product lifecycle management, the top 3 most commonly overlooked areas of PLM maturity that are hindering company-wide performance, and the #1 PLM priority that manufacturers are investing in this year from the research that we've conducted with our customers. And lastly, we'll give you practical advice on how you can align your organization for PLM success. It's key that we focus on these factors because, as we'll see in the presentation, CIMdata research suggests that the value gap between what PLM can deliver and what it is delivering for many clients is growing. So it's key that we close that gap so we can fuel our product development performance. Next, I'll turn it over to Leo to discuss PLM as an operating model.
Thanks, Chris. So I think it's quite important that we all agree very basic definition of what PLM is, and without trying to confuse anyone, so that we all speak the same language. So I will start by so PLM is all about project engineering, and manufacturing engineering, project execution. So this is what people are doing using PLM to create their products. So this is the capacity to create. So basically, the engineer communities that are working for the manufacturing organizations. Then when those products are designed and built, they have to be manufactured, so they have to be put to a factory and mass produced. So this is what we call manufacturing realization. And in between, there is a gap which obviously is filled by PLM. So product lifecycle management is all about the processes that are connecting how the people are working with the data that they are creating, and obviously using tools and technologies that are enabling those activities. So it is really the glue between product development, engineering operations, and engineering IT, enabling the entire product realization by aligning people, process with technologies. So it's the with technology that I want to focus on as well. So it's not a tool or technology, it's a people and process operating model that is enabled by technology and IT. We have a longer definition, which probably is more detailed. So PLM is the practice in business improvement terms that include creation management of information related to company digital product engineering, digital manufacturing, and project execution, augmenting human creativity and enabling faster product creation and innovation. So that's the broader definition that encompasses probably more details of the entire product realization life cycle. Now, in terms of scope, as we all know, PLM is pretty broad, so I won't intend to show you the end-to-end definition of what PLM is. However, I think I'd like to show it in context of an NPI process or an NPDI process, so a new product introduction process. All the domains or the components that constitutes PLM include obviously BOM management, requirements, CAD, project and program portfolio management, configuration, looking at a change, how do you manage change throughout the life cycle of a product, the supply chain collaboration, the business analytics, and all the parameters that you need to control to make your product realization life cycle efficient, such as cost and weight and your supply chain, leading on to simulation, manufacturing planning, manufacturing execution, and so on. So it's basically a very wide scope of activities, which I won't explain in more detail today, but I'm more than happy to follow on if there are any specific questions. But typically, we found that there are 8 business drivers that can apply across any industries in the manufacturing space. So first of all, it's about more products. So manufacturers want to increase their portfolio, their revenue, their market share. They want to do more of the same. They want to have, they want to manage their features, and they want to have performant products. So they want to control the different parameters that constitute a product. They want intelligent products, so whether it is connected cars or all the embedded software that we see now in different products. And finally, they want to access talent, so they want to have capacity and capability. They want to be able to produce more of those products. So basically, more products. Then they want better products. So they want cheaper products, more efficient. They want to realize. They want to implement. They want to build and design and build their products in a manner that they can control their costs better and manage the return on investment on their different programs. They want as well be able to use PLM as a platform to enable decision making and change. So it's not just about doing something, but it's how you change your business to enable new capabilities, to enable a greater throughput through your production line, and so on. They want to improve quality. They want to align to compliance. They want to mitigate risk of that global expansions might happen. So that's all about better products. And finally, they want to reduce time to market. So this is faster execution of the product realization. That's really maybe a simplified definition of what PLM is, what are the key drivers, and I think we move on to discussing with John about the key trends and issues in that space.
Thank you, Leo. So I'll try to relate this back to some things that we've learned from mostly from our industrial companies, our industrial clients, and how they interact and work with PLM as a support for their business work. So some trends that we have seen and identified over the past couple of years is this convergence that is occurring between PLM and configuration management and systems engineering. Really what's happening is products are becoming much more complex to design. They're becoming more complex to support. In many ways, they're more complex to manufacture, and we'll come back on some of those in a bit. Plus, companies are finding that they're changing their work processes. So people are moving from a part-based design concept to a systems-based design concept. One of the other things that we're seeing is a fundamental shift in the PLM solution space away from just putting solutions, individual point solutions in the marketplace, to really trying to provide an underpinning platform. The idea here is that we have a lot of different pieces to the PLM puzzle. We want to put those into a way that they can be delivered together, that they work together, that things happen rather seamlessly. And a third trend is what we call additive manufacturing or 3D printing. Very rapid product production or product prototyping early in the design cycles, early in the development cycle, but also late in the cycle, that is in maintenance and service. So what we find today is people who are trying to maintain very complex products with a lot of spare parts are actually putting manufacturing capabilities in the field so that they can maintain those parts without having to maintain a large inventory of what's in place. Continuing this concept, there are several areas here that really impact the concept for manufacturers, companies that are designing and manufacturing parts. And these all have to do with what we call design for everything. So globalization has taken us to a place where all of a sudden we're designing parts all over the place, all over the world. We have many more competitors than we used to have. Supply chains are much more complex than they used to be. We no longer have individual suppliers for every part. We often have multiple suppliers, and those can be geographically located, really based on the idea that we have to have local content in many products. Very, very important. Mass customization has been a dream for a long time. It's really become a nightmare for product developers. There's some real problems with customization over geographic markets, how you structure your product, how you build your product. We're seeing a lot of rapid technology insertion, a lot more software going into products today. The nice part of that is that software is easily customized. You can deal with it a lot more quickly than you can with mechanical or electronic changes in products. So companies are really taking advantage of software a lot more than they used to, and that will continue to happen. This is we're not at the end of this chain of events here. Sustainability is really multifaceted. We have lots and lots of environmental and other regulations to comply with today. Again, those are aggravated by geography. They're aggravated by product complexity. We see chemistry in a lot of products that we didn't used to see chemistry in. We see electronics and software. Validating products has become a whole new issue and problem for people. And then, combining all of those complexities increasing exponentially. We used to design for manufacturing or design for assembly or design for excellence. Now we design for everything. And we're really trying to encourage people to take a good hard look at the systems approach to that. As you make the product more complex, you better be looking at it as a holistic system. Not sure what's happened here. Can somebody advance the slide, please? Okay. So one of the things out of this is that there's this concept of a PLM value gap, and CIMdata has done some research on this area. What we have found is that if you look at the chart, the top curve on the chart is blue. It's called vision. That's the vision of the vendors, the people who are building technologies and processes out for you to use to support your PLM strategy. Their technology never quite matches their vision. It shouldn't. We don't expect it to. Technology also tends to move in steps, shown by the climbing parts of the curve. What people actually implement are the black lines at the bottom. The very worst case is the straight black line at the very bottom, where people are implementing things, hanging on to those things, not advancing them very much. The better situation is the black curvy line at the top. But we still see everybody delaying behind the technology curve that's available. And we call this the value gap, as indicated by the arrow in the chart. And we were able, through our research on this, to define the idea that there are followers and leaders. The leaders are the people that stay up nearer to the technology, the green technology curve. The followers are people who are just not getting the job done properly. They're not advancing their PLM capabilities and going forward. So let me talk a little bit about value for manufacturing companies, and we'll talk here first. Okay. Well, I'll talk about regulatory compliance first. One of the issues with regulatory compliance I alluded to earlier is that it's very, very expansive today. We have multiple versions of all kinds of compliance requirements, multiple versions being geographical by industry. It's just a real smash of stuff that's going on out there. People know about WE and ROS and REACH and those kinds of things, and now, of course, we have conflict minerals. All of this demands that you have very concise and valid data to respond, and that you be able to find that data very quickly, put it together into the right formats to do responses to regulatory compliance, right, and understand how changing your product impacts your compliance. Another big issue for people is reducing cost. Of course, everybody's always under pressure to reduce cost. This continues. But one of the things that's happened recently is we have fewer resources. We have less time. You have to be fast to market. You have to be nimble and ready to go. There's an increasing role of cost reduction for product developers. Again, we're trying to get costs down. Globalization is a huge impact on these. The idea that we're working across countries, we're working with products that have to be delivered across country, we're working with products that have to be built in different countries. Expanded supply chains, really aggravated by globalization. Local content and country of origin rules are very strict. In some companies, they're unbelievably strict. Brazil is a very good example of that. You have to essentially build your product for the local market in the local market. So you have to now have much better design because you have to use a different supply base than you have usually used. You can't rely on your supply base having experience with your products when you're going to an offshore supplier. And then product complexity, I've mentioned earlier. The issue here really is that products today aren't only mechanical. They include electrical components, they include software components, and they include, in many cases, other physics. For instance, a telescope will have optics. And all of these parts in the physics that we're looking at have to be optimized. And they have to help you define the product in a holistic approach. You have to have PLM to do that. There's also the idea here that we have people, process, and technologies in play. And if you want to get benefits out of your PLM strategy, you have to go after all three of these. You can't just optimize on technology or process. They have to be linked with the people. You have to do training. The second bullet here is kind of important for people to understand. You can apply old technology or new technologies in out-of-date ways, that is through old processes. And what you really get out of that is you can make bad decisions much more quickly. And that's not what you're after. You're after making really good decisions. Therefore, you have to train people in the technologies and the processes. They have to be all linked together. So I'll move into now some of the metrics areas. And I'm not going to read all of these because there's a lot of detail in the sub-bullets. But essentially, revenue, obvious metric, right? And what we're looking at here is PLM allowing you to get more innovative and better products to the market at higher revenue. Right? We look at operations of the organization, doing things like reducing physical prototypes, travel, material costs, design costs. And I give some ranges here. These are pretty broad ranges, but what you'll notice is that the high end of the ranges tends to be very high. Anything that's approaching 80 or 90% improvement is really high. On the revenue, you can go well beyond that if you can introduce more new products, because products have an enormous impact on the revenue of the company. Quality, we're looking for people taking QA strategies to a new level, and it has impacts on legal, contractual, liability, maintenance, test, rework, scrap, and a host of other factors. And again, the potential benefits are quite high. Cycle times. Cycle times don't always measure to money, but they do measure to your ability to put product in the market more quickly. And so they're very important. They also are important in things like preparation of certain documents, like request for quotation. If you can produce your RFQs more quickly or your responses to RFQs more quickly, then you will win more business. There's a fact out that of studies done years ago that says that the first response to an RFQ that is received by the RFQ issuer is 80% of the time wins the business. And that's a pretty interesting number. And then finally, of course, productivity. You're always looking for productivity increases. We look at this from the standpoint of searching for information, working on engineering changes, reworking due to poor data, reinventing things that you know already exist but you can't find them. Huge, huge benefits again. So now I'll turn it over to Leo, I think.
Thank you.
Yep.
So having discussed those 5 different areas, I think we can go back to our typical business drivers. So, without any doubt, anyone can understand that we can map revenue against increasing portfolio, increasing market share. We can map the operations and that you presented very well, John, in terms of cost reduction, so efficiency. We can map the quality area that you just mentioned to improving quality, but as well aligning to compliance and making sure that there's a proper traceability and so on. So risk mitigation. Then you discussed about cycle time and bringing product quicker to the market. I mean, we see this as well as the ability to deliver more iterations on those cycle times as well. So it may not be a reduction of the cycle time itself, but as well the ability to have more iterations. That would enable the manufacturers to reduce the number of errors, have the ability to improve the products in a much more leaner manner, so a bit more agile, essentially. And finally, we discussed about productivity, which I think is addressing the cost element, so the ability to do things in a more efficient manner, as well as providing access to the right capabilities and the right capacities, so the optimization of the different resources that are working on different programs. So we heard a lot from the industry that new product development is growing. Is a growing strategic challenge for companies, but this is not new. But the point here is that it's still a growing challenge. So there is still a lot to do, I think, in this space. And many are recognizing that successful companies increase their product profitability by using effective product development methods. So there's still a gap to bridge, I think, as you mentioned earlier, from a technology standpoint, but as well from a method standpoint. So processes, that those technologies are enabling still have to be improved and made more effective and leaner. This is leading on to what we call critical success factors. So how do you go and implement a leaner set of product development methods or engineering processes? Well, you have to have some execution rigor. So you have to follow a certain implementation rigor that will give you the ability and the capacity to control the boundary of your project, how it's executed, how well it's executed, plan for it properly, manage risk and issues, and so on. So that could be quite a task in itself. So it's not just about implementing the end solution, but it's about delivering that end solution as well, and very often defining what that end solution is as part of the project. One other critical success factor is obviously around the business case. So many of our customers are asking us to support on business case creation, which is not just a one-off. It's not just a one activity you do to get your funding approved by your board, and off you go with your multi-year PLM implementation project. You have to maintain that PLM business case, look at the different benefit statements, making sure that you maintain engagement with your end users and your customers or champions, and track benefits throughout the life cycle of the implementation project, if that makes sense. So engagement is the next critical success factor. So how do you engage with your suppliers, your partners, the vendors, but as well, how do you engage with your own customers, the internal customers, the end users, the different departments that are consuming data even downstream of the traditional E&D players. So how is marketing using the data? So they may have a play to define certain requirements for reviewing and accessing PLM information. And then we look at focusing on people and change management. So as you mentioned, John, the people factor is one key element of the triangle. So this is about education, but as well potentially restructuring some teams since they're going to work differently. Some roles may not be required anymore, so they may have to get retrained or repurposed. Hopefully they're going to be able to focus on what's core for them, so their core activities, and reduce what is typically the admin in the engineering world. So focusing on the innovation, the creativity. Then PLM is a continuous improvement process. So you can't just go and reinvent everything in one go. There needs to be a scope that is clearly defined, that enables some quick wins so we can see some benefits at the early stage, keep the end customer, the end user engaged, look at detailed requirements and more, what was I say, the thing that might change over time. So as the business is growing potentially, or that there are new expansion plans, or the drivers of that business might change as well within the life cycle of the PLM implementation. So those things need to be monitored and assessed. And finally, I think one of the critical success factors is around how do you deploy the solution. So having defined, having designed, having built the solution, most manufacturers have a lot of legacy applications. They have a lot of things that they've been doing for years, and there will be a learning curve, but there will be as well data migration requirements, the need to have temporary interfaces and integrations, and this can be as complex as defining the end state and the new processes, because you're going to have to go through a series of steps that may take you years to transition all your end users and all your products and programs to using the new systems. So it's quite complex. So how do you measure that? So I think I won't go into great details here in terms of the KPIs, the key performance indicators, and the different metrics, but when we assess the business case and look at how success is defined, then we have to look at how do you measure success. And typically, there are standards out there from APQC and others who define at different stages for different scope how you would look at monitoring, tracking, so first measuring and then tracking the different indicators that you want to control. So one typically is around time to market in days for a new product or service development. So how many days are you spending to put your new product or service to market? Time to profitability. So when are you going to break even from your investment? When are you going to recover from your initial investment? Especially in PLM, where often we are looking at implementing a solution that is new. So you may contribute to reducing certain budget. That's probably easier to justify, but sometimes you have to introduce a new budget to implement your PLM solution, and therefore, the first question is, when am I going to get my money back? Yeah? So how much am I going to recover from this investment? Looking at the percentage of existing, of new, old and new, or product or service improvements. So are we on time, on budget? Again, tracking the different metrics, different gateway metrics is one of the KPI, and this can apply to not just the business impact, the NPI process that you're gonna impact or you're gonna improve, but as well how you deliver your PLM project as well. Then looking at number of FTEs, so the full-time equivalent. So how many people, how many resources are basically used on developing and managing the different products or services. So that'll be another a key element to track and measure. So resource efficiency, basically. So I have a team of X today. I'm going to potentially make some roles redundant, have some hard and tangible benefits that I can identify, and therefore I'm going to improve the way that I operate in the future and look at resource efficiencies. Then cost, total cost per against a certain unit of revenue. So how do you measure something that is comparable? So making it fit to a standard unit. So here we mentioned $1,000, but it could be anything that is fit for purpose with the way of working within the company. So those metrics are really standard. They probably non-specific and could be applied to different things. But key learning here is that there are lots of metrics that can be derived around resource efficiency and other things. So if you look, for instance, at just a quick example on maintaining the business case. So you look at the different business process efficiency, or what are the drivers behind this, what kind of improvement I'm expecting from the PLM initiative. Do I have ways to reduce or eliminate those so-called hidden factories where people are essentially shuffling data from one spreadsheet to another to create reports that are not traceable and potentially increase some mistakes in terms of decision making, and this can be improved by different means. Looking at controlling better the data, so in terms of integration, but as well in terms of master data management, looking at collaboration, and finally the people element in terms of behaviors. So those will have to be put into the business case. There might be that there are significant investments and restructuring to do. I mean, these are projects as well, non-technical projects that have to be run in parallel to the more business and technical projects. This will yield business benefits and IT benefits. So I won't go into details here, but the business benefits is really what's going to attract the attention to the board, while the IT benefits are really a bit more difficult to sell, let's say, internally, because it's all going to be about cost avoidance, cost of ownership. Sometimes IT benefits or IT investments are perceived as a one-off. Therefore, you may have to spend more to get a return on investment later. I mean, it's typical. I mean, you want to do something different. You have to invest before you can recover that investment, and it's very difficult to look at IT cost reduction as an obvious benefit to justify a PLM implementation without focusing on the business side of things. So the key message is a significant benefit can be realized from business process improvement, resource efficiency, E&D and material cost reduction, and supplier cost savings. On that, I will give it a point back to John to discuss overlooked area in PLM implementation.
Yeah, so let's do a bit of a transition here. Thank you, Leo, and that was a good wrap back on a lot of the benefits and the value that you can get as a manufacturing organization out of PLM. One of the things that that Tata has developed and CIMdata also has developed, and we did this a bit independently, and then we teamed up to put together some really interesting maturity assessment capabilities. The reason we did that is you need to have a way of understanding where you are today and where you're going to go in the future. So I'll talk here about some areas that limit your success being able to move forward with PLM. And these are things we typically see with our industrial clients. Poor planning, right? You really need to carefully consider the evolution of PLM. You have to have a roadmap. You have to understand how you're going to move from where you are today to a future point, which is really maximizing the value of PLM for your business. And it's for your business, not somebody else's business. So we're trying to get to a point here where we'll minimize the value gap. Education and training. What a lot of companies do is they train once and assume that everybody now knows how to use the tools or the processes. And by the way, remember that you have to train on both tools and processes. They train once, they put the thing out on in people's hands, and they expect it all to work just fine. They go through an upgrade. Typically, they'll go through an upgrade, and they may do a little bit of retraining, but not enough. And companies often don't do any kind of refresher training. And remember in this that, again, that it's not just the technology you have to train and educate on. It's the processes that are matched with those technologies. And then you need to have continuous improvement to close the PLM value gap. Don't implement it and forget it. We have some great examples of companies that implemented. They ran into dramatic problems with their implementation, and it turned out that when you went in and looked at what had happened, they hadn't done an upgrade in 4 or 5 years. And of course, the technology had changed very, very dramatically, changed performance characteristics for them. Had they done the upgrade, they would not have had the PLM disaster that they ran into by not doing the upgrade. Right? So plan for periodic upgrades. Make sure that you're looking ahead to those. It's not changing again. Something about my hand. So, one of the things I want to lead into Chris next here is, why would you do a maturity assessment? Well, you want to understand where you are so you can understand how you can improve. And PLM maturity assessments follow any other type of maturity assessment. They measure your current state, your ability to perform in a particular area. In this case, we're going to talk about PLM. They document areas where the organization can be improved or is performing well, by the way. There may be areas where you're performing well. And then they can identify common pitfalls so you can avoid those or mitigate those. And that's very important, to try to understand where you might run into trouble before you get to the trouble point. Right? They help you narrow the value gap, again, the representation in the lower right of the screen, and increase the value of PLM to your enterprise. That means to you, your customers, your suppliers, your partners, all of the different people that you have to work with across the enterprise. And then remember, as you're doing PLM maturity, what a lot of people don't do is they don't look at the internal culture of the organization. You have to measure and understand why people are resisting change in your organization to be able to adopt PLM in a major way. Process and technology misalignment. Technologies don't always support the processes that you put in place, and as processes change, you have to review your technology. By the way, the reverse is true. If you change your technology, you better take a look at your processes and make sure that you've got a process in place that technology can actually support. And then finally, data management, right? How do you create a single source of the truth? And if people don't trust your data, and you have to understand from the people in your organization, do they trust your data? We often do these maturity assessments and find out there's vast mistrust of the information. That's one of the areas that we try to look at, right? By knowing all of those, you can maintain and update your PLM into the future. And that's really the key here. And with that, I'm going to pass it over to Chris.
Yeah, thanks very much, John. As John mentioned earlier, we have been doing the maturities ourselves for a while too. And our approach is very similar to CIMdata's, hence our partnership on this project. But typically what we look at in maturity is that we look to see where you are first of all, so that we can understand where the value can be got from. So typically we would look at things such as the best practices. Are you using today's best practices? Have you got a lot of customization in your toolset? Can you take out of the box capability, because that will reduce your cost of ownership? Are we able to align all of the people and technologies to make sure that the processes are working great? But also we need to understand the business objectives as well, and take it above the usual discussions, which tend to be around CAD. And so with that, what we designed was a framework that supports our mindset of analytics, that allows us to underpin our approach to our ascertaining benefit within an organization. This framework allows us to elevate our discussion with an organization and get to speak to senior executives to understand real business objectives and needs. To that end, our framework is supported by a 17-pillar model. And I'll show you on the next slide a little bit of detail around that, what that actually means. But each of those 17 pillars will support that value gap that John's been talking about earlier. The approach that we take allows us to measure tangible solutions that we can take in and provide you with some good benefits. And finally, we look to produce a development and business improvement plan for the organization based on our assessments. Now, how we approach this is we have different types of assessments for different types of people. So, for example, we may start initially with a single executive overview, which typically would be our benchmark assessment. I'll talk about later. We then want to get a broader perspective from multiple users across different parts of the organization at different levels. So here we will send out a very large survey, and from that we will collect the information, and from that we will produce the value map information. Another element then, to get the more specific areas of improvement, we would do targeted group assessments, which would be interview-based, data analysis, which we then take away and work from our experience in industries to provide this value gap closing, a bridge to close those value gaps. Often what we find is that a process which was adopted in one particular industry can, through subtle changes, be reused in another industry. So everyone is very proud of the products that they produce and they think that they're unique. But underlying it, they're very, very similar. And we can take experiences from one industry and, through careful tweaking, apply that to another customer. All of this is underpinned by a risk assessment to make sure that as we implement this, that we minimize the impact to your business. So as we introduce new processes, new technologies within the organization, that you're not having a loss of productivity. So to move on a moment here and talk about our 17 pillars. As I mentioned, I'm not going to go through every single one of these, but typically we can pick a few things out from here. So for example, anyone that's designing anything, anyone's making anything, has a portfolio of products, and we want to understand how that's being managed. You manage it on the back of an envelope, you have a process, a tool set that you're doing. Maybe you do, maybe you don't need it. If you look at your workflows, again, how are those managed? How are those created? And who's adhering to those things? And we mentioned earlier in John's presentation regarding the 3 points that you have to take into account, not only the technology, which a lot of people think that PLM is about, but the processes that the technology is using and the people that are using that within the process. So all three of those things are important against each one of those pillars. So for example, if we decided to put in a solution to manage that portfolio, we can't just put in a piece of technology on its own, because that won't work. If you haven't got a process that works, the technology is going to fail. And if the people aren't empowered and prepared to use that technology with that process, again, it will fail. So for each one of those 17 items, there would be 3 components supporting it. So one of the things we like to do when we go and do this maturity assessment is that not everybody is going to be at the same stage in their implementation plans. Some people are just in the initial stage of putting something in place. They're planning to put in some implementation. Or we go to another customer and they've been using it for years, and they've got a very mature system in place. And others which will be looking to upgrade it, change it, replace it with something else. And each one of those has a unique set of business requirements that we need to address. So we have a suite of tools that allow us to go in there and address the current needs at each one of those phases. So for example, in our planning phase, we need to understand what are, out of those 17 elements, what are our priorities? Which ones we want to do first? What's the impact between them? And how should we prioritize them? We may go in there and the customer just tells us, look, we just want to manage our documents. That's what we want to do. And we're going to have that in there for 10 years. And that's fine. But before we just put that in there, we need to ensure that it's put in context of everything else you may want to do in that 10 years. That's part of what the assessment does. Let's take a little bit of a look now at the tools themselves. As I mentioned earlier, we have a suite of tools that we've been working with CIMdata on. The first one is the benchmark tool. And Chris earlier on mentioned that we would like to invite you to take this assessment up with us at the end of this webinar, if it's of interest to you. By working with a partner like CIMdata, we're able to combine our experiences to achieve flexible and relevant solutions that allow us to do these assessments. The first one you can see on the left there is the benchmark assessment. Here we take 50 minutes to 60 minutes discussion with a senior executive in the business, and we ask them where they feel they are in terms of their maturity on these different 17 pillars. And then we rate that between 1 to 5. But then also ask them how they think they want to be in terms of their vision and their mission to be in those areas. That doesn't mean to say you have to be at the top level every time. Maybe if you're comfortable putting your portfolio in the back of an envelope and you're happy with that, then that's fine. But if you want to move up the scale, you want to be more mature in that area, then we want to understand that and understand the gap that you're trying to close. So we measure both the current state and the vision state of the two situations. In addition, we also capture some numerical information around finances, so we can put together a high-level benefit matrix. At the end of the assessment, we're able to chart the as-is state, to-be state, and compare it to others within the industry, so you can see where you fit within your business. Numerical information allows us to provide them with a capability of benefit that we invite the executives to spend. Now they could spend that benefit by reinvesting it back into the business to improve their portfolio, as Lee was mentioning earlier on about portfolio management. Or maybe they want to improve the quality of the product. Or maybe they want to realize that money as a cost saving by downsizing, which perhaps is one of the last things you may want to do, particularly in the current climate where you want to retain your workforce and do more with them. But it's an option that you may still want to do. And the purpose of this element in the assessment is for you to understand that the benefit can be fed back into the business and used to provide elements to close that gap. Middle one, the health check, is this online survey. It covers the 3 areas that we talked about earlier, which is the technology, organization, and process. Each of these 3 surveys are conducted by different people within different parts of the organization. And again, we collect that information to produce a maturity of where they were and predict a future state as to what might happen if they were to use those processes more effectively. The unique one of the health check is that we can run it at any time throughout the organization, whether we're planning to do something or whether you're running it all the time. Because what we're doing here, you're putting a stake in the ground to identify what the maturity is at this point. If then later on you wanted to compare a progress, you run it again, and you can do a comparison between those two states. So it's an ongoing thing that we can run on a regular basis. Finally, the PLM roadmap, or PLM scan, it might be heard, is a more detailed investigation where we talk to groups of users through interviews or reviewing data to put together a detailed report that allows us to provide a technical plan and a roadmap for execution that we can later turn into a blueprint that will be the individual steps to make that work. So all of these make up our solution set. So the key message from these assessments is that in order for you to get the most value from your PLM, you must consider all the elements to understand the gaps. And then you need to choose a partner like Tata Technologies to help you close those, to become a strong leader in the areas that are of interest to you. Quickly, I just want to give you an example of a customer that was based in France. It's a multi-billion-dollar company. And they had a very complex organization, multiple PLM systems, very poor part traceability, reusability. We conducted with them a diagnostic across their enterprise, and we put a PLM roadmap for them. And from this roadmap, we were able to identify there were about 75 key opportunities for improvement, which would net about $85 million worth of savings. At the moment, we're currently supporting them to implement those on the current initiatives. So I'd like to thank you for that, and I'd like to hand you back to Leo, please.
Thanks, Chris. So I think I discussed how we look at of a PLM maturity with our customers. The key is down to then execution. I mean, how do you implement those changes? How do you go on to deliver those values and the items that you have identified? So there needs to be a clear focus on execution rigor, and we have an implementation framework, which I won't discuss in details, but it's covering all kind of elements that needs to be considered for a successful implementation. So there will potentially be some overlapping themes here within the PLM space as well, and the execution of how do you go to implement PLM. That makes sense. Then one key element is around planning and managing risk and issues. So we look at using different models to produce a technical roadmap that we can use to not only describe how the solution is going to be looking like when it's finished, but as well the different steps that are required to transition from where we are today to where we want to be. So this is about phasing the deployment, looking at the different integration and transition requirements. So in this example, we start from an as-is state, and we want to be to a new set of tools and technologies, as well as processes and different ways of working. And there might be a need for 4 different steps to transition from before we achieve to that 2D stage, before we arrive to the 2D stage. So this is about looking at the different integration requirements, potentially temporary processes, such as dual maintenance or other manual type of integration that might be required to transition from where we are to where we want to be. Very simply, in the amount of time that we have, I think this will be obviously underpinned by a detailed project plan, and there will be different teams working on different aspects of connecting the technology project, the technical project, the IT project, with the business and business transformation project, the change project that will underpin this type of transition. Chris is now going to tell us a bit more about some of the findings that we have been observing from a priority in efficiency improvement.
Yeah, thanks, Leo. Yes, on this chart here, you can see some of the results that we've taken from our assessments combined with the data we've had from CIMdata. And this is pan-industry, so it's very general. But what we've seen so far is that the overriding trend seems to be around reducing time to market. If they had the opportunity to spend that effort. And when we look at the maturity level, the greatest opportunity here is on the supply chain communication. And as products become more complex, OEMs tend to want to push this responsibility down to the supply chain so they can minimize their costs and cut time to market. Now, clearly, this is very generic, and within the same industry, you may find that certain priorities will be different. So, for example, if you were with a Formula One organization, then perhaps time to market is not going to be what you're interested in, because, of course, it's a fixed timeline for the racing circuit. Their portfolio is fixed, it's just 2 cars, but quality would be a high element for that particular organization. So this clearly doesn't show on this chart here, because, of course, it's too generic. And, of course, what we would need to do is every organization has a specific set of needs and requirements. Hence, we would have to do a personal test with you. Okay. Thanks very much, Leo. Back to you.
We are arriving towards the end of our session today, so just wanted to summarize very quickly the different discussion points that have been addressed through the discussion with John, Chris, and myself. So first of all, we discussed about 5 different metrics that manufacturers are using to maximize value from their PLM solutions. John elaborated on revenue, operations, cycle time, productivity, quality, and so on, and we discussed some of the KPIs that underpin these different business drivers. Then we discussed around 3 most commonly overlooked areas where I think John has mentioned, a lot of value can be diluted if it's not executed properly. So planning was one of them, education and training, and as well looking into doing a continuous improvement approach to closing the value gaps. And finally, Chris has addressed as well some of our generic lessons learned, let's say, on priorities that we see some of our customers investing into for 2015. So one of them was around supply chain, collaboration, communication. So again, this will be a bit generic and a bit quick at the end, but I think we can elaborate a lot more with our customers on specific points and issues that they have. And finally, we discussed around practical advice. So I won't go through the list here, but we discussed about execution rigor, we discussed about maintaining the PLM business case, a little bit around engagement with customers, internal customers, end users, as well as with vendors and partners. Focusing on people and change was a key discussion point today as well. Looking at continuous improvement and quick wins was briefly mentioned as well. And finally, looking at phasing deployment and planning integration and transition. So I think similar to that, I think really we'd like to thank you for the attendance today. I think this was a great collaborative effort with Tata Technologies and CIMdata. So thank you, John, for contributing. I'd like to hand over to Chris if we'd like to take 1 or 2 questions maybe.
Thank you, Leo. Definitely some compelling takeaways that we can tell our board from your experience. We do have time for 1 question from the audience, and it's about prioritization. They ask, how would you prioritize closing the gaps across all those 17 pillars? And is it even a goal to close all the gaps for all the areas? Chris, could I ask that question of you?
Yes, thank you, Chris. Well, the value gap has the chart that John shows the trend of everything. But when we do our assessments, we ask the as-is and the to-be state, which identifies the gap for that particular company. So no, you don't need to close the gap for all of these 17 pillars. The priority comes on where that business plan is for each of those items as to which you would do first. And to Leo's point about planning the phases, okay, you want to know where you are, where you want to be. Prioritization then comes in planning those elements in a roadmap so that we can minimize the amount of impact on the business. John, was that a comment on that?
I will comment on it because we've done a lot of these assessments over the years. And what we find is that there are primary gaps, that is, gaps that are very, very important to your business plan. You should concentrate on those. Things that really have a compelling impact on how you do product development and how you're going to carry forward to whatever your business goals are. And I'll echo Chris, it is not necessary to close the gap in all areas. You could find that prohibitively expensive to do, for one thing, and for another thing, some of the gaps are not areas that will be critical to your business, and therefore you can let those go. You can delay those. You can do parts of them. There's no magic bullet here that says you have to close gaps in all of the pillars that are out there being measured.
And the way of closing those gaps could be to outsource as well. So there could be ways to outsource the non-value add, the essential non-value add activities to somebody else instead of trying to fix a process or technology that is not fit for purpose. So depending on your business case, obviously you prioritize what makes more sense in terms of return on investment.
Yes, Leo is correct on that as well. When you're trying to close the gaps, you have to look at a number of different things. Is it a technology gap, a process gap, or an organizational gap? Then you have to have a strategy for closing the gap. And part of that strategy, particularly around process and technology, is to look outside, to look for expert guidance, look for people that can help you improve your PLM solution suite. Look for different tools from outside. We had a discussion earlier today around reporting and analytics. Many of the reporting and analytics tools that are available are third-party tools. And so you can go to third parties to find these things.
Thanks, John.
Thank you, John. Looks like we'll only have time for one question today, but I encourage everybody to type out their questions in the question pane for GoToWebinar, and our experts from Tata Technologies will be sure to reply to you with a personal email. So with that, I'd like to thank everyone for joining us today. It's been an excellent presentation. Special thanks to our guest, John MacKrell from CIMdata, as well as Leo Grealou and Chris Hind from Tata Technologies. It's important to note that achieving the success that we've seen is possible, but it really starts with choosing the right partner, as we've just discussed. To begin that journey, we'd invite anyone who's attending to contact us about taking a complimentary PLM analytic benchmark assessment. It'll help you gauge your own PLM maturity and to begin to fuel your product development performance within your own organization. To do so, please contact us at www.tatatechnologies.com/contact-us. Thank you, everyone. Have a great day.